Grounded, home of mindfulness, meditation, self-exploration. Today I'm going to be talking about the stages in which we go through as we begin to first realise something isn't quite right, and then that leads us down into the rabbit hole, which eventually brings us to consciousness itself, to realising the source. But there is a number of stages in which we go through until we actually realise the source of it all. And I'm going to be talking briefly about these stages. And then you can sort of, if you are on the journey to awakening, or, you have that inner yearning for knowledge, then it can sort of paint a little bit of clarity of where you are in your progression towards enlightenment. So the first kind of stage is the dormant stage. Oh, that's such a great word, dormant. So in the early phases, how most people live, we're dormant, which means we're just kind of like in a sleep-like state. We're not actually challenging anything, we're not challenging reality, we're not challenging our sense of self. We're kind of like on an autopilot, doing what we do, just going about, generally led by what we love, and push away what we don't want to acknowledge. So that's kind of like the sleep-like state, where there is no questioning and you're just kind of on an autopilot, sailing through your life, having the same kind of experiences, attached to the same kind of things. But then there becomes a stage for some of us, and now more than ever, like a blossoming of human beings, where the first thing that happens is we begin to question our reality. Because deep down within, something doesn't seem right, something's off, something's not quite right. And then we begin to delve a little bit deeper. And this can bring us down to the kind of like conspiracy level. And a conspiracy level is a really good place to be, because the conspiracy level is where we're actually challenging our reality. It's the beginning of the start of the shift. When you begin to question your reality, you begin to question what you've been told. You begin to question what you're being fed. No longer are you just taking it on board and accepting it as the truth. Now all of a sudden there's a bit of a change in perspective, where I'm actually challenging what I'm being told. I'm actually challenging what's actually being fed to me, because something isn't adding up. Something's not quite right. And then we go down a conspiracy hole, and if you go down a conspiracy hole long enough, you'll realise that there is enough information to actually back up a lot of the conspiracies in which we sort of find ourselves in. That being the global elite and that kind of stuff. And it does hold its ground, because it's the very basis for challenging your reality. And it's the very surface level of reality, what you're being fed. So if we pursue that long enough, we come up with the question, okay, so if there is a global government and there is a global conspiracy to enslave us all, then what is the purpose behind it? How are they controlling us? And that leads us down to the path of spirituality. Now, I don't like using the word spirituality because there's too many connotations, too much crap has been attached to spirituality, but it begins, when we challenge our reality, it opens up our minds. And if our minds are open up enough, then the truth begins to seek the truth. Because it's the truth in you that challenges your reality. And it's the truth in you that seeks out the truth. So once we've challenged our reality, the truth begins to draw to it more the truth. And this is when we come into contact with spiritual teachers, mindfulness, meditation. So as we begin to draw in spiritual teachers and spiritual information, then begins the next kind of a reality check. And that reality check is going from what am I being told to who am I? Oh shit, when you start going down the road of who am I, you're opening up a can of worms. But this is the next stage in which we go through when we are going through the ascension process, which is who am I? And as we go through this stage, what we're actually beginning to do is question our own identity. And this is a very confusing stage, This is the stage in which you are met with yourself. Now, for most of us, we've done such a great job in covering over ourselves through addiction and distraction and this and that, but the truth is being magnetized to the truth. It wants to be recognized more and more and more. And for the truth to be fully recognized, it has to pass through what is false. So what was false was your external reality, but then as the truth comes closer, it comes against the next false. And that false is your sense of self. And so as we come up against our sense of self, we come up against our own problems. We come against our own pain. And this leads us down to meditation. This leads us down to self-inquiry. This leads us down to self-exploration. And over time, through self-exploration and through taking on knowledge and through the truth magnetizing towards the truth, what actually happens, the truth begins to blossom within you, which means you begin to recognize source consciousness, which means the truth is realizing once again that which you truly are. And as that happens, as this stage happens, the final frontier, this is where it all comes together. What actually happens in this stage is your sense of self, your personal sense of self, of who you believed yourself to be, begins to dissolve. And in replace of the dissolving self is more recognition of the truth. So you're beginning to realize your consciousness more and more and more and more. And as you realize your consciousness more, you let go of what was false. And that's yourself. To the point where you have become the truth once again. To the point where you've recognized that you are the source. You can kind of look at like the truth. It's like a match. And once it gets the spark, it begins to ignite. And as it begins to burn up, it burns down everything in its way. Now, if you enjoyed this video, feel free to like and share. And until the next one, much love.